From the very start, I've loved RC cars since I was a child. So I've got photos of me when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old playing with RC cars, and it was a real passion of mine when I was young. The hardest part of it was when I decided to focus on social media full time.
Jordan Smith, the mastermind behind RC Drift Tok, one of the largest RC drift pages in the world, has not only captivated millions with his incredible trick shots and RC content, but also cracked the code on how to grow a niche audience in the fast-paced world of social media. What's behind this meteoric rise? How did he turn a hobby into a full-time career? And what's next for him in the world of RC drifting and beyond? Let's find out with Jordan Smith. I want to start right at the beginning. Could you take us right back to the very beginning and talk to me about what got you hooked on RC cars and why drifting specifically?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite as well. Pleasure to be on. I'm a consumer of the podcast. I love it. So I'm glad to be on and hopefully answering a couple of questions that might help some of your listeners with their social media journey too, I guess. From the very start, I've loved RC cars since I was a child. So I've got photos of me when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old playing with RC cars, and it was a real passion of mine when I was young. That probably continued until I was maybe about 12 years old or so. But then after that, as I got a bit older, I did sort of get distracted by other hobbies and interests, real cars, sports, things like that. But in 2021, I sort of accidentally fell back into the hobby and then became even more obsessed with it than I was when I was younger.
Do you remember the moment that you realized it could become sort of more than a hobby?
Yeah, I do. So the way it came about, I was looking after the social media for a car garage in Newcastle, which is my hometown. And we're always trying to come up with different ways to create interesting content and different things to feature on the social media pages. And the mechanics in the garage were in RC cars. So I started filming a bit of that just because it was something different and something interesting for the page. But I realized that the videos of the RC cars were outperforming the videos of the real cars quite substantially. So straight away, I thought I'm maybe onto something here. There's maybe something quite interesting. And at that point, I decided to make an effort to put more attention into building an RC focused page. And really from the start, it was really well received and got a lot of interest pretty much straight away.
So that was the moment that you realized that there was a niche for RC driving?
Yeah, correct. And more specific than that, I guess, I realized there was a niche for vertical and short form content around the RC hobby. So there's loads of big RC YouTubers who do long form content, and some of them have some really big audiences and have been established for a long time. But there really wasn't much, particularly on TikTok when I first started. I did start as a TikTok page, and there wasn't really much short form in the way of RCs. So yeah, I thought there was maybe a bit of a gap in the market for that, and the view numbers and the interest I got on the videos certainly showed that was the case.
That's so interesting. So like there is a school of thought that says that you either be first or you be better, and it seems like you were first effectively, or one of the early people on TikTok at least doing RC content.
Sure, that's it. Yeah, exactly. And it's although I noticed there was a big demand for it, I didn't think it was going to become as big as it has. Certainly not. But I thought it was quite interesting. I've always loved social media, and I've been involved in it for quite a while. So seeing a positive reaction to a different kind of content really made me focus on it. And I guess along the way, I really got back into the hobby quite heavily too, and I've remembered how passionate I used to be about it. And I think that helped in the early days because my journey of discovery back into the hobby was probably reflected on the channel in the early videos of me figuring everything out and understanding it all again. And I think that early passion to get back into it probably helped too.
Right. And you said you got into it in 2021, and if you sort of got back into it more heavily in 2021, what were you doing sort of for work, if you don't mind me asking, before the channel?
So I've done all sorts of different things. So most of my jobs have been around data and analytics, which helps quite a lot when it comes to the social media stuff I do now. But in various different industries, I've worked in property, anti-money laundering, recruitment, and lots of different things. But a lot of it's been around using data to build strategy. And that's something that's helped a lot. So focused on social media quite heavily for the last 10 years or so. And social media running for different businesses, different companies and things is how I ended up setting up my own RC page too.
You also run your own sort of social media content company, don't you?
Yeah, so consultancy company. So we work with a couple of different businesses. It's quite small at the moment, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. So something I'd like to continue to grow. And a lot of the lessons I learned from the RC page, I can use that information to help customers with their content strategy and help them grow their social media presence.
Going back to your channel and going back to your growth in sort of 2021, who was your biggest support during that time? I'd imagine if you sort of turn around and said to your partner, whoever it was in your life, listen, I'm going to start creating, remote control car content. Who supported you during that time? Who was the biggest support for you?
I think my friends and family have always been really supportive of me. I've always had lots of different business ideas and lots of different projects on the go. So I guess a lot of them probably would have thought, oh, it's another project. You'll forget about it in a month's time and move on to something else, possibly. But they were all really supportive. Everyone who knows me in person was. The one thing I would say is certainly the people online weren't. So a lot of the comments are very negative and a lot of negativity around it, even though on the face of it, it's a very innocent hobby. It's playing with radio controlled cars. You still get a lot of negativity, particularly along the lines of why is a grown man playing with toy cars? And some people not understanding that it's a hobby, it's a release, it's something that's a bit fun. But I think people do sometimes look at it being more of a younger person's hobby. So I did get a lot of negativity around that in the early days in particular.
How did you deal with that? How do you deal with the negative comments right at the beginning when you sort of weren't used to getting like a barrage of toxic comments or whatever? How did you deal with it?
I've always been quite resilient to that kind of thing. I think some of them I actually found quite amusing, to be honest. There was some really funny comments about how old I must be and what kind of basement I must live in, and all these funny things.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess you just gotta not let them get to you, and just think about the reasons that you're doing it. And for me, it was a bit of fun. It was something I was passionate about in terms of a hobby, but also I could see it from a social media page point of view growing and doing quite well. So because of that, I was confident in what I was doing, and I was positive it was going somewhere in the right direction. So that helped me, I guess, ignore a lot of the negativity I got when it first started.
Amazing. And what would you say has been the sort of hardest moment for you during this journey, and how did you get through it?
I think probably the most difficult decision, and I guess the hardest part of it, was when I decided to focus on social media full time. So I was working another full time job, and I decided it would have been May of 2023. The monetization was pretty good on YouTube. There was money coming in to the point where I could justify quitting my job and focusing on social media full time. But it was a really tough thing to do because I had a good job. I was earning a good amount of money. I've got bills to pay, that kind of thing. So that was probably the toughest thing along the journey, to make that decision and to take the plunge, if you like, and go full time. Sure.
It seems to have paid off.
Yeah.
I have a technical question before I get on to my next one. I have a technical question about short form content versus long form content on YouTube specifically. And obviously I'm not going to talk about any figures directly, but the earnings that, I've seen people earn on TikTok, for example, are dwarfed by what they can earn on YouTube. I've seen that you've got about, I think, 4 or so long form videos on YouTube. What was the decision to make you go, right, I'm doing short form pretty much exclusively?
Yeah, so I originally started out with that intention in mind. As I mentioned, I noticed that there was a lot of long form creators already in the space and within that niche, but there wasn't many short form. So it was originally my intention to stick with that. However, I did get tempted along the way to dabble with some long form videos too. Clearly, the monetization's a lot better, and there was also some products and projects I had which were really difficult to cover in a short form video, so having that extra time would have been useful. There's some others on the horizon which are the same and that I will end up doing long form videos for. However, because short form is quite niche when it comes to RC, there's not many people doing it. I decided to really focus on that and try and put as much effort in that as possible. And once the results started coming in terms of the channel's growth, then I realized I was along the right path and just kept doing it, really.
Well, yeah, stick to what works. And I think not just, I think doing it well is a thing. You noticed that it worked. You were doing the short form content, which was obviously great, but you were doing it better than the others, or at least really well within the niche, right?
I'd like to think so. I mean, the channel's, it's the biggest RC page in the world now in terms of subscribers, including the long form videos. So I'd like to think I've done okay.
You've done all right. So coming back to the early days, or you mentioned that your early videos got a lot of comments and suggestions from viewers, and I think even in that interview with the Top Gear team, you sort of mentioned that you found that some of the comments that were made, they were your best performing videos. What role did your audience play in the early part of your sort of career on YouTube and TikTok?
Yeah, a huge role. They were very influential in the type of content I made on the channel. So I decided I wanted to get back into the RC hobby. I decided I wanted to document it and put it out on social media. I had all that decided, but the style of videos I was going to do and the style of editing, the type of content was very much driven by the audience that was following the page in the early days. One, through the comments. So they were commenting, asking me to try different things with the cars. So can you do this trick? How does this thing work? And asking various different questions. I seen that a lot of viral videos at the time were responses to comments. So a few of my early videos were just that. It was me responding to a comment and either answering a question by talking, which you don't see too much on the page now, or answering a question by doing an action. So someone might say, can that car do a 360? Can that car knock over that little item in the background?
Yeah.
And I'd answer with a video and try and complete that task or that challenge that was left in the comments.
Literally listening to your audience and then acting on it, which is great, which is advice that a lot of content creators give, is essentially listen to feedback, right? And then adjust.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. And I guess the other way, not as direct, but another way I listened to the audience in the early days was by looking at the data and the analytics and looking at the different videos, the different styles of videos I did and which performed best within the audience. And that was me, I guess, looking at that and thinking, if it's performing well, the audience must like that kind of style content. Yeah. I'll do some more of that. So a good example of how that changed the direction of the channel is in the early days, I was doing quite a lot of technical videos. So I was talking about the mechanics of the RC cars, how you set up the suspension, how you tune the engine or the ESC, and how you set up the car to perform best. But as the channel's progressed, I do a lot more trick shot videos. And that's because the audience loved those. So whenever I did a trick shot video, I did some kind of challenge, the views were far in excess of the technical style videos. So that really changed the direction of the channel to the point where I do a lot more trick shot videos than anything else.
I want to touch on analytics. I know you're a big fan of analytics. Yeah. So am I. So you were looking at, to respond to your audience when you weren't getting, comments directly about it, you were looking at retention rates, I guess. You were looking at likes and views, but also like swipe versus, swipe away versus watch and that kind of stuff. What are the ideal metrics that you were looking at for retention versus swipe to swipe away and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, it all started on TikTok with the channel. So a lot of the early decisions were based around that, and I was aiming to get 70% retention for the first 3 seconds. Which doesn't sound like a lot, I guess, if you're not into analytics and social media. But retaining 70% of attention on TikTok is tricky.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's everyone loves swiping on TikTok and flicking to the next video. And so it's difficult to catch someone's eye and keep them there. But I found if I could keep the retention for 3 seconds for most of the viewers, the video would go on to get substantial amounts of views and do better than the rest on the channel.
Right. And so, and what's the secret then to creating content that captures attention?
Yeah. So there's a few tips and tricks, I guess, I've picked up along the way, which have really helped and I think can translate to other videos and other niches as well. So the first thing I always think of is what's the opening image or the opening scene on the video. So when I'm trying to come up with different ideas of videos and content to create, I'm always trying to imagine I'm a viewer, sat flicking through TikTok, and the first image that pops up of this video, is it something that's going to capture my attention and get me to watch the video? So that's definitely the first thing I think of. You've then got to pace the rest of the video correctly to ensure that when you do capture their attention, they don't get bored and swipe to the next video. And there has to be some kind of payoff or reward at the end of the video to ensure that by the end, hopefully they interact with that video, they share it with a friend, they add a comment, they like it. So having a good payoff at the end, I think, is really important to get that interaction too.
That's so interesting. We had a guy that came onto the show relatively recently called Justin Flom, sort of a very, very big YouTuber also. And he was giving advice during that show, sort of saying that you need to obviously have an amazing hook, first sort of 3 seconds, super important on the swipe feed. But then you're saying like, give them a taster of for his type style of videos, give them a taster of the payoff almost immediately, maybe sort of cut it off just before the money shot, if you will, if that's I don't know how to, phrase that.
Sure, I get you. Yeah.
Get into an interesting middle if you can, but then get out as quickly as possible. Would you agree with that sort of format?
Yeah, I do. I think that's pretty much the same format I follow. The other thing I would say is as soon as you deliver the payoff and you've done the trick shot, or if you've revealed a bit of information that's important, cut the video at that point. Don't drag it on thereafter.
Let's talk a little about, you said about one of your most successful videos. I believe it's way over 300 million views right now. What went through your mind when you realized your content was reaching that many people? Was there sort of like holy shit, we did it. Like, it's done. Like,
yeah, it is quite scary. I try not to think about that, to be honest, because it can be quite overwhelming when you think about how many people see the videos.
Insane, yeah.
Yeah, I've had videos on different channels perform well, but never to that extent. So it is quite surprising to me. I do everything I can to make the videos as good as possible, and I really put time and effort into the analytics and the production of the video. But when you see one take off like that, it is always quite surprising and quite overwhelming. So an example I give is if you go to a football stadium, there might be maybe 50,000 people there, 90,000 people if you're lucky. And then you get a video with 380 million views. It's really hard to comprehend that it's possible to do.
It's an insane amount of people, right? With that in mind, a lot of creators, especially what we've spoken to, have struggled with burnout in one way or the other. You know, just trying to keep creating new, fresh things, exciting. Have you dealt with burnout in your career so far? How do you deal with it? How do you keep things fresh and exciting?
Yeah, I have, in terms of, I guess, energy levels and motivation. I think that's always something that's difficult. One of the good things with the page I'm running at the minute, the RC page, is it's something I'm genuinely passionate about. So I think if it's a topic that interests you, it doesn't feel as much like work. So though sometimes I have worked 7 days a week and really long hours, working by playing with a remote control car is a bit different to working at an office doing anti-money laundering or one of the other admin jobs that I used to do, you know. So because it's something that excites me, I guess that helps with burnout. But I do try and make an effort to have regular breaks and take some time out and not always sit and look at analytics, which would be something I'd be tempted to do. I've got to force myself away from data and analytics when I can.
Really? It's so interesting. How much of it do you think is to do with, a lot of people say when they look at content creators, they think, oh, this person exploded overnight, that it's luck. I mean, they don't see all of the work that's gone in beforehand. How much do you think luck plays into the success of a creator versus the science behind creation?
I'd say it's less. It's a lot less about luck than people imagine. I think there's got to be a little bit of luck involved. I think because the way I understand the algorithm is you get a sample group of people who are the first people to see the video. Their reaction to the video dictates the next group of people that will see it, and so on and so forth. So the bit of luck for me is if that sample group that see the video first or just a really unlucky group of people that you've been chosen to show that video to and they just don't relate with the content, that might really detrimentally affect the video. However, that's probably a one-off. If you're making content every day and you're putting it on several different platforms, that sort of luck element to it, I think, becomes less and less important, and it becomes a lot more about strategy and the quality of the content you put out there.
And I need to dig into this because I'm so interested by this. It's fascinating what you just mentioned. When you're saying like it would be put out to a set group of people, I think on TikTok it's about 300 people roughly, people it gets sent out to. What happens then if your video fails at that point? And have you had that? And then what do you do? Do you take it down? Do you run with it? Do you think I need to reiterate? What do you do?
There's a few different ways that you can handle it. I personally wait would be the first thing to say. Particularly now with TikTok and with YouTube as well, videos can blow up at a later date. So just because it initially didn't get that reaction, don't think it's a complete flop and it's never going to blow up, because sometimes it does. And I've had some really good performing videos do poorly at first and then take off over time. So I always leave them there. But what I do is I keep an eye on the video, and if I don't get the response that I expected, I might try and re-edit and upload a different variant of that video in the future, but I'd still leave that video there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't delete videos off the channel, mainly for the reason that I find it may grow in the future. So I don't see it as a benefit to delete it unless it's something I'm really not proud of. I've done it and I think actually that really wasn't a good edit, I shouldn't have hit post. Then I might take it down and redo it. But generally speaking, if I was happy with it and proud at the time, but it doesn't get the reaction I expected, I'll just leave it there and maybe redo and edit in the future.
What do you wish people knew about the work that goes into creating a viral video?
That's a good question. I'm going to need a second on that one, I think.
Sure, please.
I'll take a drink while I'm thinking.
Have a drink. Yeah. So what do you think? Yeah. About the work that goes into it. I mean, a lot of people, you know, as we were talking about, I think, you know, people think, oh, he was lucky. He filmed his cat doing a backflip. It went viral, lucky, right? Or whatever it may be. The thing is, you're consistently viral, which means there's a pattern to it. There's a science, like Mr. Beast.
Yeah. So I think my answer to that would probably be that most people could go viral one time and get a viral video just by continuing to post, and you will at some point hit a chord with an audience and a video will go viral if you post consistently. I think the really tricky bit, and that's something that's maybe unappreciated about some of the big creators, is that they can continue to get high view numbers, continue to grow a channel, and continue to get viral videos. I think doing it consistently is the difficult part, and sometimes the more underappreciated part, I guess, from a creator's point of view.
And what advice, on that note, what advice would you give someone trying to sort of turn whatever they're interested in, maybe RC or some other passion, into a career in content creation?
So the first thing is come up with a bit of a plan. So for me, I looked at it and thought, right, I'm going to document my journey on getting back into the RC hobby. So I started thinking which parts of that hobby would make exciting videos. So I put myself in the shoes of a viewer and thought, if I was sitting on TikTok and I was watching this kind of content, what would excite me and what would I find interesting? And then once I figured that out, I just started posting videos. So I committed in the early days to posting a video every single day.
Right.
I don't do that anymore.
No,
but
sure.
I did for the first maybe 3 months of growing the channel. I posted something every single day. Some were flops, some did really well. And then continually looking at the videos that are performing well and those that aren't, and changing your strategy around that to try and grow an audience who are interested in something you're also passionate about.
Was it the analytics that really, when you said, you know, you saw the ones that flopped?
Yep.
Was it the analytics that was the story, that for you, that was the story behind the content? Or was there more than that, in the sense of, like, I don't know, the way you edited it, or the, you know, the items you used, or whatever it may be? Was there more to it, or?
Yeah, I think it was the style of videos for me. So I thought what's interesting to me about the hobby might not be interesting to other people. So as I said, I really like the technical side of it. I like to know how everything works and how everything's put together. But that doesn't always make the most exciting video. Sometimes a video of a car doing a trick is far more exciting than that. So I think it's about looking at the different styles of videos you can do, what's going to appeal to the widest audience within that niche, and maybe starting to focus on that at first. But then, yeah, sure, looking at the analytics as well, and using that to dictate which direction you go in.
Obviously, there's a massive audience for people who are interested in RC. Remote control cars. Do you have a strategy to appealing to people who aren't into? I saw your video. I'm not into, it's not one of my passions, particularly into being into RC. I just found it fascinating immediately. I thought, like, this guy, and I looked through your channel. I thought, this guy knows what he's doing. Not just, with skill with the control, but also with the videos, right? He knows what he's doing. He's found his audience. How do you appeal to the broader market? Is it those trick shots, the sort of dude perfect style trick shot stuff that appeal? What was there a strategy behind that, or did you just think, I like this stuff, so I hope other people will? There
is a bit of a strategy behind it. So I always try and think about. So RC is a niche topic, and drifting RCs is a niche within a niche.
Within a niche, yeah.
So it has the potential to be a really, really small audience, but clearly I want the videos to do really well and get millions of views. So I do try and think, how could I relate this niche that I have to something a bit wider? So the trick shot idea, very much as you pointed out, Dude Perfect is one of the biggest YouTubers out there, and they very much launched the channel based on trick shots. So I know there's a big appeal and there's a big demand for that kind of video, I guess. So I thought, how could I relate what I do, RCs, to something that's a bit broader, that being trick shots, to try to do a trick shot with an RC. That worked really well, and I think it's because it does capture that wider audience who are interested in something not as niche, being the trick shots and the satisfying video content, but still related to the hobby and the thing I'm passionate about.
Is there any difference between a TikTok video, how you create your TikTok content versus your YouTube content, or is it the same? Have you found a difference in the audiences that you can
identify?
So there's a big geographical difference. So my main audience on TikTok is America, so it's United States. My biggest audience on YouTube is India, so there's a geographical difference. I also have on YouTube a lot of non-English speaking countries that follow the page too. So one thing I'm very mindful of is you'll notice in a lot of the videos I speak in very little of them, as little as I possibly can. And the main reason for that is because I realize I've got a global audience, and as soon as I start speaking English, there's maybe 15% of the world speak English or whatever. So I've lost 85% of the audience.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I started to differentiate in when I started doing YouTube, because I realized how much more of a global audience I was getting than just American and British people on TikTok.
I did notice actually going through a bunch of videos, there's like Korean comments, there's Arabic, there's so many different languages being spoken underneath there.
That's right, yeah.
So it's great that you've made the choice to speak as little as possible in a sense and sort of appeal to a broad audience because you're getting everyone and it's obviously paying off. Now you've obviously mastered your craft, but what's one thing that you're not good at that people would be surprised to hear?
I don't know if it'd be something people are surprised to hear, but talking in front of camera is something that I try and avoid. So what we're doing today.
Sorry.
So I know that some of the projects that I could take on for the RC page could be really successful to a certain audience with a person in front of the camera. But I will, if I can avoid it, try not to do that myself. I haven't got that side of it mastered yet from a presentational point of view or talking on camera. I've always been behind the camera, looking at the data and enjoying the RC hobby. So getting in front of it, I guess, is something that would be probably a bit of a weakness for me and something I'd have to work on in the future if I want to take on bigger projects for that channel.
Is that something that you've considered sort of maybe getting someone else to come on board and host for you or anything like that?
Could do in the future. I mean, the reason I haven't delved into that too deeply is that the channel's been consistently growing since it launched. So it launched in 2021. It's at like 11.5 million subscribers now, and it's grown pretty consistently, about 300,000 subscribers a month. So my fear with changing it too much and maybe bringing someone else on board or changing the style of content is I don't want to slow that growth down. It's still working at the moment. So although I like to tweak it and change the direction a bit, I think anything that's too much of a harsh change in the content style might scare off some of that audience. Yeah. Particularly with the point I made about the international audience. If I come on in my Geordie accent and start talking about RC cars, someone who maybe doesn't speak English, it certainly isn't going to be interested in hearing that. So I do try and have the widest appeal I can with the content. So I haven't focused on that much.
Is there any? I'm just going to ask you a little bit just about any particular trick or a video and the hardship involved. Has there ever been a moment when you've been creating a video that you've wanted to give up on a particular trick or a video and you think, I just don't want to, I'm not going to do this?
Yeah, lots of times. I mean, the trick shot videos, as I said, that was never the intention with the channel. It was just something I thought would be quite fun to try, but it's become such a big part of it. Some of the trick shots have become more and more intricate and more difficult to do. So some of them have taken like 2 days solid where I've been just going, and it's a very repetitive process. There has been times where you struggle for motivation, but I know in the back of my mind, if I get the video, it's going to be worth it because it's going to do really well. So I've always managed to push through it and get it. However, there is times where I've started something I've realized is just way too difficult, and I've gradually made it simpler and simpler until it was achievable.
And did you, when you said it would be worth it, do you mean like for engagement or for financially or like for the channel growth, or like when you say worth it, is it all of those things? What?
Mainly for the channel growth. So that's
Okay.
my main focus. I think everything else, I mean, it has to, I try and do it full time, and to continue to do it full time, it does have to make money. But my main focus is the growth of the channel. And the way I see it is the bigger audience I have for the content I put out there, the more opportunities I can get to monetize and do other things in the future anyway. So my main focus is just always growth. I'm always thinking, what can I do that's going to be exciting to my current audience to keep them watching, and to a potential new, wider audience that might tune in and decide to subscribe.
Yeah. When we talk about monetization, just very briefly, are you monetized just simply through ads from YouTube, from TikTok, or do you do stuff like product placements or anything like? Do you do any sort of sponsorship stuff?
Yeah, so a few different ways the page is monetized. So native ad revenue, obviously through YouTube and TikTok. I don't get any from Instagram, unfortunately, but I do for YouTube and TikTok. I've done some brand deals with different companies promoting their products within the videos. I've never reached out to brands to do that, but brands have approached me, and if it's something I thought was cool, then I thought, yeah, I'll do it and make a video about it. I've done product placement in terms of RC cars. So if a manufacturer is launching a new car, they might reach out to me and say, do you want to test it on the channel? So I've done that. But again, it's not something I've really pushed for. The other thing that's worked quite well for me from a monetization point of view and might help some creators, because it's not one I hear talked about very much, is working with record labels for background music.
Oh, cool.
So when I first started the channel, it wasn't even something I knew was a thing and happened, but I had a record label reach out to me and say, can you use one of our new songs in your next video and we'll pay you some money? And I said, well, yeah, sure. It's a cool song. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And because that worked quite well, I actually went and reached out to a few other record labels and said, look, I've done this in the past. It's worked quite well. If you ever have any new songs, feel free to send them across. And if I like them, I'll agree a deal with you and use one in the video. And in the early days, that was probably the best source of income for the channel, strangely. So we were getting sent those quite a lot, and I was using those on quite a lot of videos, and that really helped. I know TikTok now has a feature called Work with Artists, and that's actually built into the TikTok app now, where you can go on and you can look through songs that are available to use in your videos, and it gives you an amount of money that they'll pay you for using that song. So TikTok's doing that within app now. There is a third party app I've used for that as well called Zebra, Zebr, and that's the same sort of thing. As a creator, you can go on, you can look at songs that are available for promotion, and if you use one, you get paid depending on the views you get.
What's the money like? You don't have to go into specifics, but what's the money like versus TikTok versus YouTube? I heard KSI come on and complain about it, saying, "Look, I got like 3 billion views. I got like $3,000 total from it." I was like, from TikTok, but on YouTube,
Sure.
It broke the bank. So, without going into specifics, is there so much of a dramatic difference now in regards to earning money at your size of an account?
At one point in time, they were probably pretty level. I had a similar amount of money from YouTube and TikTok. That's changed quite a bit for my channel now because the TikTok monetization rules have changed to only monetize videos over 1 minute long.
Ah, yes, of course. Yeah.
So you only get paid if it's over a minute now. Most of my videos, most of my content's less than 1 minute long. So I don't get much monetization from TikTok anymore. The only time I do is if I do a longer video, maybe a compilation or something a bit more technical, but that might not get as many views as the shorter videos. So TikTok isn't as great, whereas YouTube, it's totally monetized on views for short form. So even if it's a 5-second video, but it gets like 300 million views, there's some really good monetization from even a short video, whereas on TikTok, you wouldn't get that.
Is the great eye of Jordan turning to face YouTube then? Are you sort of you're moving away from TikTok and sort of deciding to...
I am. I mean, the page started as a TikTok page, and that was originally what it was going to be. DriftTok, yeah, it's in the brand. And also personally, I felt I knew quite a bit about Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, but TikTok was still quite new to me when I launched the channel, so I really wanted to focus on that. But now the biggest audience is actually YouTube, so more followers, more views, more subscribers month on month, so it's growing a lot quicker too. So yeah, definitely YouTube's becoming more of a focus over time.
I think it's your biggest channel now, isn't it? YouTube.
It is.
YouTube channel.
So YouTube's 5.8 million subscribers, TikTok's 5.1, and YouTube's growing the fastest too.
I was going to say, what are the growth rates of the? So, and I think you're just under 1 million on Instagram, also, aren't you?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. So it's 850,000 or something on Instagram.
Not on Facebook.
I don't really do too much Facebook. There is a page there, but it's just set up to automatically post off Instagram. It's never got the same reaction on Facebook, the RC page, as it has on different platforms. I don't know exactly why.
Is that a demographic thing?
Yeah, I think it is a demographic thing. I do think the content appeals to a younger audience, and Facebook demographics clearly a little bit older, and it just hasn't seemed to have the same positive reaction. A lot more negativity on Facebook, I find, as well. So a lot more negative comments. It's not as nice of a place to hang out. So I don't tend to focus as much on Facebook as I do the other three.
You're not the first person to have said that. Yeah, to be fair, would you? Let's the Jordan of young Jordan back 2021, I guess, or even before. If you could tell yourself something, to expect something, or to do something better, or not do something, or give yourself advice, what would it be to young Jordan?
I definitely give myself some reassurance that this is a good idea. You have spotted something. It is worth pursuing and it is worth spending some time on. Definitely when it comes to the negativity around comments and things, have a thick skin, learn to laugh at it. And I did do that over time, but there was a couple that got to me, and I'd definitely say ignore that negativity, and really focus on it, and just also spend more time where your audience is. So I spend a lot of time now looking through the comments when I do a community post, looking through the replies to that, looking through my messages a lot more. When I first started the page, I didn't reply to as many messages as I should have. I didn't look at many comments that much. I was very much focused on just get a video out, get it posted, look at the analytics. But I've now, as well as the analytics, spend a lot more time looking at the comments, looking at the messages, and really taking more notice of what my audience are telling me directly to.
Yeah, yeah. I have a question about that. Slightly off script, but in regards to your comment section, I've personally had a couple of videos that had over a million views. Now I had I don't know, maybe 1,500 comments or something. You must get way more than that. I couldn't, on TikTok, I couldn't keep up with it. It was do you go through every comment?
Yeah, that's it. I'd say I go through most comments, even though there's a lot. But I'll go through and I'll look through the comments, but I don't reply. I haven't got time to reply to all of them. But if something catches my eye, I will. If it's a compliment or it's a positive comment, I'll normally give it a thumbs up or a like. If it's a question and something that is a relevant question, I'll answer it. But a lot of it is I just don't have the time. It'd be great to do that. I think if I had someone else on the team who could sit and reply to comments all day, I'd quite happily have someone do that, because I think it's great for the community, but it is very, very time consuming.
It really is. So, and I guess part of your job, you mentioned earlier, is kind of market research also. So if people are going, can you do this trick? Then you'll probably go and do that. Did someone, I think one of your latest videos, you did a drift, you knocked the top of a bottle cap of a tiny little where are you getting these props from? Are they like doll's house props?
Yeah, just scale parts. I get them from Amazon, Etsy, eBay. There's a lot of people make them for dioramas and for dolls' houses and things to make some really cool props and interesting things. It's become a bit of a habit of mine as well, looking out for things. So whenever I'm out, I'll look at when I'm out shopping or whatever, I'll look around, see if there's any cool items I spot that could be incorporated in my videos. And if I see anything on TikTok, on social media, I'm always thinking, how could I incorporate this in a cool video?
Did that little, this is just for me, but this little bottle top, did you cut it off, or was it already separated from the...
No, cut it. Yeah, there's
a
lot of that. I guess that's something that might surprise people as well. There's sometimes quite a bit of engineering and setup involved before doing the videos as well. So some of the trick shot videos in particular, I might spend more time setting the scene up than actually doing the trick, because I've got to modify the little objects. I've got to make sure they're the perfect height, the perfect place, the lighting's good enough to see them. And sometimes that takes just as long as doing the video itself.
What do you film with?
A phone. So I just use an iPhone.
Do you?
Yep.
Okay, now that surprises me. Okay, so interesting.
Yeah, so just iPhone, film in 1080p, 120 frames per second. So film everything in slow motion, even if I don't intend to use it as a slow motion clip, just in case something cool happens and I want to slow it down. Yeah. But yeah, I film everything on an iPhone.
How long did because I think it may be on TikTok, the most watched one is the 3 darts, and you say the water balloon. How long did that take?
That took, I think, it was a full day, but it was about 11 or 12 hours, I think, on that one.
You had to be close to going. Were you not close to giving up on that one? Did you not think,
so the good thing with that one is I was getting close. So it was the timing that was the issue. Hitting the darts was simple enough, but getting the timing right for the balloon to fall and not get everything soaking wet was the tricky part. As long as I can see some progress and I feel like I am going to get that trick eventually, I'll keep going until I do.
Do you have a room in the house sort of dedicated to doing these tricks, or like a studio room or something like that?
Yeah, I rent a studio that I film the tricks in. So yeah, I've got all my RC stuff in there, and I've got a little home studio, which is where I'm at now, where I do the editing and use as my office. But yeah, I've got a little studio. It's something I'd like to create in the future as a bigger area and a bigger studio where I could do some more exciting content and bigger videos. But that's for the future.
Okay, just to finish off, just two more questions. If you weren't making content around RC and RC cars, what other or hobby or passion would you be filming instead?
Yeah, so it's one behind me. So real cars. So real cars, motorbikes, it'd be something with an engine of some kind. So I've always been really passionate about cars, bikes, anything like that. I watch a lot of really good car YouTubers, bike YouTubers, and that's definitely, if I had unlimited time, I'd have a channel for each. And I'd have
Really?
RCs, I'd have cars, and I'd have bikes.
You think you'd be doing, what would the content be if you did sort of cars? Would it be reviews or would it be drive test? What would it be?
Very much like the RC page. I think
Like drifting real cars.
A little bit of that, but I think I'd also let the viewers decide what works best. So I'd start off with a bit of all sorts, and I'd try loads of different things and see what got the best reaction. I definitely think a full-size version of the RC tricks would work really well. So if you could do similar videos but with real cars, I think that'd be really good. I am learning to drive a little bit like that too, so maybe in the future, you never know.
So that leads me to my final question. So where do you see RC Drift Talk going in the future? Are there new projects or exciting collaborations or whatever coming up?
Yeah. So yes, the short answer is there's lots of exciting stuff coming. So the channel's just really got to a size now where I'm starting to get some really interesting brands and other creators reaching out to me and saying we should do something together. Let's come up with a strategy. Let's come up with a plan. So I've got some really exciting videos that are in the works at the minute for big scale trick shots. Doing some more like bigger budget projects. So there's definitely going to be a lot more of that happening over the next year. I'd also like a venue that I could hold events at as well, somewhere probably in the UK, I think, but something which could double up as a bigger studio so I can create bigger, more exciting content, but also somewhere I could host events where people could come and actually try the cars and try some of the tricks themselves, which I think some of my followers have asked for quite a lot and I think would really enjoy. So definitely more things along those lines in the future.
Awesome. Sounds like big plans. Where can people find you if they, obviously we're going to have all the links, everything else in the description. Just let us know where people can find you.
So it's at RC DriftTok, TOK, on all platforms.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on Break the Internet.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed that. Thanks.